Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
In the quiet hours of the night, when the hospital was lulled into a deceptive calm, something shocking shattered the peace. A wild wolf burst through the front doors, causing an immediate stir. The once peaceful hallways, filled with quiet talks and the steady beeping of medical equipment, suddenly buzzed with fear and confusion. Staff and patients alike couldn't believe their eyes as the wolf's entrance turned the familiar, comforting environment into a scene of chaos. In the midst of the chaos was Katie, a young nurse known for her composure in tough situations. But even she was taken aback by the sight of a live wolf in the hospital halls. As her colleagues scattered in all directions seeking refuge, Katie found herself rooted to the spot. Her heart raced and her hands trembled. What the heck was going on? However, in the midst of the chaos, Katie spotted something that stood out. The wolf had something in its mouth, something small and definitely not typical for a wolf to carry. It looked like a tiny animal. This unusual sight sparked Katie's curiosity, pushing her fear aside. She felt a strong urge to act, realizing there was more to the situation than just a wolf invading the hospital. The image of the wolf, normally a figure of fear, gently carrying this small creature, stirred a deep need in Katie to find out why and to help. As soon as the wolf was spotted, hospital security jumped into action, calling for an evacuation right away. "Everyone, please proceed to the nearest exit," calmly they shouted, their voices firm yet reassuring, cutting through the air. They moved quickly, guiding the bewildered crowd, making it clear they were leaving nothing to chance with a wild wolf on the loose inside the building. "Stay together and follow me," they directed, ensuring no one was left behind in the scramble to safety. Wolf breaks into hospital, nurse brought to tears by what it carries in its mouth. The surge of adrenaline from the earlier moment was nothing compared to what Katie felt next. Her heart hammered in her chest with an intensity that drowned out everything else. This was her chance to make a difference, to alter the course of events unfolding before her eyes. The sight of the wolf was etched into her mind, a vivid image she couldn't ignore. She was compelled to act, driven by a mix of concern and curiosity. With a resolve that surprised even herself, Katie made her decision. She would lead the wolf into a nearby room, hoping to contain the situation and buy some time to think. The plan, formed on the spur of the moment, worked better than she dared hope. The sound of the door closing behind them was sharp, a definitive click that seemed to seal their fates together in that confined space. The air turned dense, charged with an anticipation that weighed heavily on her shoulders. What now? For a brief moment, there was silence, a deceptive calm before the storm. Then, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The wolf's eyes, once filled with a kind of wary understanding, now glinted with a fierce, untamed light. Its body stiffened, muscles coiling like springs ready to unleash. Katie pressed her back against the door she had just shut. She could feel the change. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched the transformation unfold. The wolf's growl, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the floor, filled the room. In a flash of insight, Katie shrank her stature, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. Her mind raced with thoughts of how to communicate her intentions of peace to the wolf. "I'm not your enemy," she silently conveyed through her softened gaze and slow movements, hoping the animal would sense her desire to help. Katie quickly understood that the wolf's aggressive actions weren't meant to be harmful. It was evident the wolf, along with the small creature it protected, needed assistance, whether from her or a professional veterinarian. Katie's heart pounded with the responsibility of the moment, her resolve firming with the realization that she was now their only bridge to safety and care. Katie curled into herself, minimizing her presence to seem less intimidating. Amazingly, the wolf seemed to understand Katie's gesture. It relaxed a bit, and its growls turned into cautious whimpers. With the danger not feeling as immediate, Katie took a deep breath. She could smell the clean scent of antiseptic in the air, which mixed with her growing determination to get help. Katie carefully slipped out of the room and dashed down the hospital corridors. All around her, chaos reigned as doctors and patients alike scrambled for safety, their faces etched with panic. Eventually, she stumbled upon a room where several doctors had sought refuge. Approaching them, urgency threaded through every word she spoke. "Please, we have to help them," she pleaded, desperate to convince them to check on the wolf and its unexpected companion. However, her plea was met with reluctance. The doctors looked at each other with unease, their hesitation visible in their awkward movements and the tense silence that followed her request. The police had been notified. One of them finally responded, his voice steady but his eyes avoiding Katie's intense gaze. "There's nothing more we can do." Katie's heart sank. The plea in her voice grew more desperate as she attempted to sway them. "But we can't just wait. What if it's too late yet?" Despite her appeals, the resolve in the doctor's eyes remained unchanged. They had made their decision, leaving Katie standing in the sterile hallway, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Feeling a mix of frustration and determination, Katie didn't give up. She pushed through the hospital corridors, her footsteps echoing with purpose. Each refusal added fuel to her resolve, driving her to find anyone willing to take a leap of faith with her. Finally, her persistence paid off when she found Steve, one of her closest colleagues and a skilled surgeon, known not just for his medical expertise but for his courage and compassion. Steve, upon hearing Katie's plea, saw the determination in her eyes and agreed to help without a moment's hesitation. "Let's see what we can do," he said, his voice a mix of resolve and curiosity. Together they made their way back to the room where the wolf and its companion waited. As the two of them neared the room, the haunting sound of howling filled the air, a clear signal of distress. The emotional howl underscored the wolf's deep concern for the small, mysterious creature it had brought into the hospital. It was a sound that resonated with a raw, protective urgency, revealing a profound bond between the two beings. With every step closer to the wolf, Katie's heart raced, her mind attuned to the delicate situation unfolding before them. As she reached out, hoping to bridge the gap of trust between them, the wolf responded, its teeth bared in a stark warning, a primal reminder of the boundaries not to be crossed. Katie hesitated for a moment, aware of the daunting task ahead. She had no idea what the small creature was, only that it appeared extremely frail and required immediate assistance. Steve proposed consulting an animal specialist, such as a veterinarian, although the nearest one was quite a distance away. Despite this, she swiftly grabbed her phone and dialed a vet, urgently conveying the situation. There was a long pause after she finished talking, making Katie's heart race. She could almost hear the clock ticking, each second stretching out, making her more worried. Finally, the vet asked her to describe the creature. Katie did her best, mentioning every detail she noticed. After she finished, there was another silence on the line. It felt like forever as Katie was standing there with her phone in hand, waiting for the vet to say something. She could hear her own breathing, fast and shallow, and the distant sound of hospital noises. She was hoping for some words of wisdom or a plan, anything to help the weak creature in front of her. In that quiet moment, Katie realized something troubling. The vet didn't know any more about the mysterious creature than she did. Even so, he understood the situation was serious, especially as Katie explained how the creature's condition was getting worse. Suddenly, Katie was startled by the wolf's loud, sad howl. Its powerful cry filled the room, making the urgency of the moment even clearer. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. Something was seriously wrong. The howl was more than just noise, it was a deep cry of fear and sadness that echoed around them, leaving everything quiet afterward. Just standing there, amidst the sterile scent of the hospital and the distant sounds of activity, Katie realized there was more going on than she first thought. Right at that tense moment, the room's door flew open as police officers rushed in, their footsteps loud against the hard floor. They scanned the room quickly, their eyes alert and focused, ensuring no one was in immediate danger. "Everyone, please stay calm," one officer announced, his voice authoritative yet reassuring, cutting through the tension in the air. Katie, her heart pounding in her chest, stepped forward. "Please, keep your distance," she pleaded, her voice firm but laced with urgency. She gestured towards the wolf and its companion, indicating the delicacy of the situation. Just as Katie was negotiating with the police officers, something completely unexpected happened. The wolf, which until now had been a bundle of tense energy and guarded caution, began to move. With deliberate steps, it walked towards the door, its movements purposeful and clear. It paused, turning its head to look back at Katie, as if making sure she was paying attention. Katie's eyes widened in surprise. The wolf's behavior was so out of character from the aggressive posture it had initially shown. It seemed as though it was inviting her, urging her to follow. There was an intelligence in its gaze, a silent communication that was both astonishing and mysterious. "Look, it wants us to follow," Katie said softly, her voice filled with wonder. The police officers, upon witnessing the wolf's unexpected movement, hesitated, their hands instinctively reaching for their belts, ready for any threat. It's not safe," one officer cautioned, his voice edged with concern, reflecting the uncertainty of the situation. Katie, however, was captivated by the wolf's behavior, her fear momentarily forgotten. She understood that this was a critical juncture, a chance to uncover the truth behind the night's mysterious events. "I have to see where it leads," she insisted, her voice carrying a mix of determination and awe. The officers exchanged wary glances, clearly torn between their duty to protect and the unusual nature of the request. Despite their doubts, Katie was determined. "I'll be careful," she promised, moving towards the wolf slowly, but confidently. The officers, still hesitant, decided to stay back and watch her closely. Katie followed the wolf as it led her down the hospital halls. The bright lights above hummed softly, making shadows that moved on the walls. The wolf walked with purpose, as though it knew exactly where it was headed. Katie felt her heart beating fast, driven by both excitement and curiosity. The wolf quickly led Katie away from the hospital and into the woods. The sense of urgency grew stronger around them, making every leaf rustle and distant owl hoot feel more intense. The moonlight added a mysterious, slightly spooky feeling to the forest. Katie felt she had to trust the wolf, even though everything was becoming more mysterious and a bit scary. With trembling fingers, Katie pulled out her phone and dialed Peter's number, a friendly animal expert. When Peter answered, his voice was a reassuring presence in the middle of all the uncertainty. "Katie, what's going on?" he asked, genuine concern in his tone. Katie, breathing fast, quickly told Peter about the extraordinary events of the night. "Peter, a wild wolf has brought me into the woods. It has something with it, and I can't leave it behind." There was a short silence from Peter, and Katie could almost sense his worry growing. "Katie, it's great you want to help, but please be careful," he said. "Wild animals can act in ways we don't expect, and this could be dangerous." The forest around her seemed to amplify the weight of Peter's words, the rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of the owl, becoming a symphony of nature's warnings. Yet Katie felt pulled between wanting to help and listening to Peter's sensible advice. "Stay put," Peter urged. "I'll come to you as quickly as I can, and we'll figure this out together." Katie paused, torn about what to do next. She decided to send Peter her live location, hoping he could help once he got there. But as time slowly passed, the urgency she felt became too much to ignore. She was driven by a force she couldn't explain, compelling her to keep following the enigmatic wolf deeper into the unknown. As the wolf delved deeper into the thick woods, Katie's anxiety grew more intense. A creeping feeling of being observed sent shivers down her spine, and every rustle of leaves in the shadows felt foreboding. She could hear strange sounds in the distance. What was that? She had never heard that before. Just when she was on the verge of turning back, a sudden loud noise shattered the eerie silence. Katie's phone buzzed with a call, but the signal was weak, turning the vet's voice into a garbled mess. She could barely make out his words, but it sounded like he was telling her to come back. Now, Katie faced a crucial decision: follow the wolf further or listen to the vet and turn back. After a moment of hesitation, Katie's courage kicked in. She chose to chase after the mysterious sounds, feeling she was getting closer to uncovering something important. The deeper she went, the denser the forest became, and a strong feeling told her she wasn't alone. It felt like eyes were watching her every move. Her heart pounded with fear until, out of nowhere, a voice in the distance called out her name. The rush of adrenaline coursing through Katie's body made everything feel surreal, clouding her ability to recognize the voice calling her name. But as she looked in the direction of the sound, clarity struck. It was Peter, somehow managing to find her just when she needed him most. However, the wolf, not knowing Peter, acted on its instincts and started to rush towards him. Realizing the danger in a flash, Katie quickly stepped in front of Peter, ready to protect him. Miraculously, the wolf stopped its charge right before reaching them, avoiding a confrontation at the very last moment. Katie's sudden intervention, coupled with the visible relief on her face, seemed to communicate to the wolf that Peter was not a threat, but a potential ally. With a subtle change in its stance, the wolf turned away, suggesting that both Katie and Peter should follow its lead. The sudden charge of the wolf left Peter in a state of shock, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground. Gasping for breath, he turned to Katie, his eyes wide with confusion and concern, and asked urgently, "What's going on? What are we chasing here?" Katie, her own heart still racing from the encounter, shook her head, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I have no idea, Peter. The gravity of the situation is a mystery to me as well." With Peter right behind her, they kept going through the thick woods. As they ventured deeper, the distressed noises she had been hearing earlier grew louder with every step, creating an ominous soundtrack to their journey. The sounds seemed to reverberate through the trees, and the tension in the air became palpable. Finally, they reached the origin of the noises. Standing at the edge of an old, weathered well, their eyes widened in realization. Something had fallen down the well, and the distressing noises were coming from within its depths. The wolf, with an almost knowing look, hinted that this was where it wanted Katie and Peter to lend their assistance. The well opening loomed like a bottomless black hole ready to swallow them up. As Katie peered down, the cool damp air from within seemed to cling to her skin. Even though they couldn't see anything, they were sure something was there because they could hear its strange, echoing cries of distress. In a stroke of luck, Peter had brought a strong rope with him. Examining it carefully, he turned to Katie with a plan. "This rope can handle my weight. I'll descend to find out what's there." Katie hesitated, her mind racing with fears of things going wrong. Doubts gnawed at her, and she wondered if she was even strong enough to hold him. She noticed Peter's hands shaking slightly as he prepared for the descent. He then took a deep breath and began to lower himself over the well's edge. Katie clutched the rope tightly, realizing that their journey into the well's enigmatic depths was underway. Peter's voice remained steady and calm as he instructed her on handling the rope. She focused on controlling her own nerves and gripped the rope tightly, determined not to let him down. As she focused on her task, a quiet thought crossed her mind. "I must trust in myself as much as he trusts in me." Peter rapidly disappeared into the darkness below. Katie watched, her heart pounding faster with every inch he dropped. The well was deep and shadowy, and all she could hear was the echo of Peter's careful movements. Her hands were sweaty, clutching the rope that connected her to Peter down in the blackness. Then, without warning, the rope jerked and slipped right out of her hands. Panic flooded her. She had tried to tie the knot around her waist, but now realized it wasn't tight enough. Fear choked her as she frantically tried to grab the rope again, but it was too late. In a quick move, Katie stepped on the end of the rope, hoping to stop it from slipping further. For a moment, she thought she might have stopped it in time, but then she felt the rope go slack quickly, meaning Peter had already fallen down. A scream shattered the quiet, a sharp, terrifying sound that bounced off the well's walls. It was Peter. His scream cut through the air, filled with pain and fear. Katie's heart stopped. She could almost feel the cold, damp air rushing up from the well, carrying Peter's scream to her. "Peter," she shouted, her voice trembling. "Peter, are you okay?" But only silence answered her, thick and heavy. The well seemed to swallow her words, leaving her with a dreadful silence and the echo of Peter's scream in her ears. She felt helpless, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. In a panic, Peter's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, desperately trying to turn on the flashlight. The darkness around him was thick, pressing in from all sides. With a click, a beam of light sliced through the black, revealing the deep, hidden spaces of the well below him. His eyes went wide with fear as the light touched the corners of the abyss, and suddenly the strange noises he'd been hearing became clearer. He could hear the tiny skittering and whispers of movement echoing off the stone walls. With a pounding heart, he pointed the flashlight towards the unsettling sounds, his breath catching in his throat. The light revealed dozens of tiny, glowing eyes staring back at him. The creatures, unknown and eerie, seemed to squirm and move in the shadows. Peter could barely breathe as he realized he wasn't alone down here. The sight of these creatures, with their eyes shining in the light, sent shivers down his spine. But then, a realization dawned on him. "Katie, you've got to see this." Peter's voice echoed up from the well, mixed with shock and a hint of fear. Katie moved closer, her heart racing with excitement and a bit of fear. Looking into the dark space lit by Peter's flashlight, she noticed something. There was movement. Little shapes running around that looked just like the strange creatures the wolf had brought to the hospital. The cold realization washed over her, sending a shiver down her spine. They were not alone. The wolf that had burst into the hospital, causing chaos and confusion, was part of a larger mystery, one that lay hidden beneath the earth in this forgotten well. As Peter's light danced over the shapes moving below, he called up to her, "These are the same creatures, Katie." The wolf. Maybe it was leading us here on purpose. Peter's voice trembled, his words echoing off the damp walls of the well. "It seems like it wanted us to find these creatures, trapped down here." Katie, peering into the darkness illuminated by the shaky beam of Peter's flashlight, felt a chill run down her spine. The small creatures moved in the shadows, their eyes reflecting the light and creating an eerie glow. The sounds of their movement, a soft rustling, filled the silence, making the scene even more unnerving. Peter continued, his voice laced with concern. "Remember the one you told about at the hospital? It was injured, right? Seeing these ones here, they might be in trouble too. Maybe they fell in and can't get out. We can't just leave them here." Katie nodded, her decision firming up in her heart. The memory of the injured creature at the hospital flashed through her mind, its pained eyes pleading for help. "You're right. We have to save them. If the wolf brought us here, it must be because it knew we could help." Katie's heart pounded as she shouted down to Peter, "I'm going to get both you and these creatures out of there. Just hang on." She knew she had to come up with a plan, and fast. Looking around desperately, she spotted a large tree nearby. An idea sparked. She could use it to anchor the rope. She rushed over and looped the rope around the tree, pulling it taut and tying a triple knot. Satisfied it would hold, she called down, "Peter, I've secured the rope. Start handing up the creatures one by one. I'll make sure they're safe." Peter's reply echoed from the well, "Got it. Here comes the first one." Katie watched with bated breath as a small furry creature emerged from the darkness, clutched gently in Peter's hands. He had created a makeshift sling out of his jacket to carry them up. As Peter drew closer, Katie reached down and lifted the frightened animal to safety. "You're okay now, little guy," she whispered. Katie created a warm, soft area for the animals to recover. One by one, more emerged from the well as Peter made trip after trip down the rope. Each time Peter ascended, muscles straining, Katie's nerves jangled. But the rope held fast. With each creature rescued, Katie felt a swell of relief. After a tense and breathless half-hour, Peter, with great effort, hoisted the last of the tiny creatures out of the dark pit. Laid out on the ground, the 5 animals blinked in the dim light, their eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and curiosity. The air was thick with tension as Peter and Katie pondered their next move. They could each take 2 of the creatures, but that left one with no one to look after it. Suddenly, an idea struck them. "The wolf," Katie blurted out, her voice tinged with surprise at the thought that had just occurred to her. "It can carry the last one," she remembered, her eyes widening. "I saw it with my own eyes, how it brought the first creature into the hospital with renewed hope." Katie and Peter quickly gathered the tiny creatures into their makeshift carriers. The wolf stood nearby, its eyes attentive and posture ready. Gently, Katie lifted the last fuzzy animal and placed it into the wolf's waiting mouth. The wolf clamped down softly, its jaw tender yet secure around the precious cargo. Hurriedly, the unlikely trio made their way out of the dark forest, moving swiftly back towards the hospital. Katie's mind spun with questions. Would the creatures be all right? What were they exactly? But she tucked her curiosity away, focusing on getting them medical attention as fast as possible. Though a veterinarian would have been their first choice for the creature's peculiar needs, the reality of their situation pointed them elsewhere. The hospital, with its bright lights and promise of care, was not only closer but also the most feasible option given they were on foot. The urgency of the moment left no room for second-guessing. Adding to their decision was the fact that the sixth tiny creature, the one that had initially led them to the woods, was already there. Bursting into the ER, Katie called out urgently for help. To her relief, a seasoned veterinarian stood ready, his experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation. With firm yet gentle guidance, he directed Katie and Peter to place the creatures on examining tables. However, as Katie moved to follow, the vet halted her with an outstretched hand. "I know you want to stay with them, but I need room to work. Please wait outside, I promise to update you as soon as I can." Katie opened her mouth to protest but caught herself. She realized the vet knew best. With a reluctant nod, she retreated to the waiting room, Peter by her side in a shared state of nervous anticipation. Time crawled by endlessly as the two of them sat hunched in the sterile waiting room, watching the hands of the clock make their endless loops. Katie wrung her hands, her mind swirling with possibilities, each one more concerning than the last. What if the creatures were too injured? What if the vet couldn't help them? She had never felt more powerless. All they could do was wait and hope. After a while, the vet swung open the door and welcomed them inside with a smile. He informed them that they had arrived just in time, and their efforts had succeeded in saving the animals. Katie, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity, turned to the vet and asked for an explanation. It turned out that these animals were a rare crossbreed between a wild dog and a wolf. The vet couldn't determine how they ended up inside the well, but he emphasized their uniqueness. Katie was adamant about not letting them return to the wild. They needed a safe place to call home. Luckily, Peter's connection to the local animal sanctuary provided a glimmer of hope. With ample space and resources, the sanctuary was more than equipped to care for these extraordinary beings. It was a perfect solution, offering them a chance at a new life filled with love and security. In the days that followed, Katie found herself drawn to these pups, their bond growing stronger with each passing visit. As she spent time with them, she felt a sense of warmth and affection envelop her, filling her heart with joy. It was a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty she had felt on that fateful night in the forest. Reflecting on her journey, Katie knew she had made the right choice in following the wolf into the unknown. It had led her to a place of unexpected happiness, a world where love and gratitude flowed freely from her newfound furry friends. And as she looked into their eyes, she knew she had found not just companionship, but a profound connection that would last a lifetime. Katie's brave choice to follow the wolf turned fear into a heartwarming discovery. It showed how kindness can connect different worlds, leading to a bond between humans and animals that was both unexpected and deeply moving.